Captain Hyun-woo Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. The Terra's Hope was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was special. It carried people whose job was to meet new alien friends. For 20 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition. They were known as the friendly ones, the ones who could talk to anyone. "Captain, we're getting close to the target system," said Lieutenant Yuna Park from her station. She was young but smart, one of the best pilots in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she guided the ship through space. Hyun-woo nodded. "Good work, Yuna. How long until we arrive?" 2 hours, sir." The mission was simple. Long-range sensors had found something strange in the Kepler 442 system. The readings showed technology, but not like anything they had seen before. It was old, very old. The Coalition wanted to know what it was. Dr. So-young Park walked onto the bridge. She was not related to Yuna, but they had become friends during the long journey. So-young was Earth's best expert on alien life. She had helped make friends with 17 different alien species. Each time she learned their ways and helped them understand humans, too. "Any new information about what we're going to find?" So-young asked. Hyun-woo pulled up the data on the main screen. "The energy readings are unlike anything we've seen. Commander Ji-hoon Lee from Intelligence thinks it might be from a civilization older than any we know." So-young studied the numbers. "These power levels are incredible. Whatever built this had technology far beyond ours." The Coalition was a group of many different alien species working together. The Alterians were the leaders, tall blue beings who were very wise. They had kept peace in the galaxy for over 200 years. The Keth Mori were warriors with honor, always ready to fight for what was right. The Zephyrians were small and smart, building amazing machines. Humans were different from all of them. They were not the strongest or the smartest, but they could understand others. They could feel many emotions and change to fit new situations. This made them perfect for talking to new species and solving problems between old ones. "Captain," called Ensign Taemin Oh from the communications station. "We're getting a message from Coalition Command. Put it through." The face of Chancellor Zethva appeared on the screen. The Alterian leader looked worried, which was unusual. Alterians were known for staying calm in any situation. "Captain Kim, I want to stress how important this mission is. The energy signature you're investigating appeared suddenly 3 days ago. Before that, our sensors showed nothing in that system for centuries." "Understood, Chancellor. Do you think it's a trap?" "We don't know. That's why we're sending our best diplomatic team. If this is a new species, we need to approach them carefully. If it's something else..." Zethva paused. "Be ready for anything." The communication ended. Hyun-woo looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all good people, trained for first contact situations. But something about this mission felt different. "Yuna, take us to yellow alert as we approach the system." "Yes, sir." The Terra's Hope dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw took their breath away. Floating in space near the fourth planet was a city. Not a space station or a ship, but an actual city made of crystal that sparkled with its own light. "Incredible," whispered So-young. "It's beautiful." The city was huge, easily 10 kilometers across. Tall spires reached out in all directions, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of pure energy. The whole structure glowed with soft blue and purple lights. "I'm not reading any life signs," reported Taemin, "but there are massive power readings coming from the center." "How old is this thing?" asked Hyun-woo. So-young ran scans from her station. "The materials. Captain, some of these readings suggest this city is over 1,000,000 years old." "1 million years?" Yuna turned in her chair. "That's impossible. No civilization lasts that long." "Maybe they do," said Hyun-woo quietly. "Maybe we just haven't met them yet." As they watched, the city seemed empty and dead. No ships moved around. No signals came from it. It was like finding a ghost town in space. "Take us closer, but slowly," ordered Hyun-woo. "I want full scans of everything." The Terra's Hope moved carefully toward the Crystal City. As they got closer, they could see more details. The crystal was not just clear, but had colors inside it that moved like living things. The energy bridges pulsed with light that seemed to have a rhythm like a heartbeat. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of scanning beam," said Taemin. It's very weak, almost like the city is looking at us. Are we in danger? I don't think so. It feels more like curiosity. So Young checked her readings again. The scans are getting stronger. Whatever is in there is definitely aware of us now. Suddenly, the entire city flared with brilliant light. The spires that had been dark began to glow. Energy coursed through the bridges between buildings. The heartbeat rhythm became faster and stronger. Something's happening, said Yuna. The whole structure is coming alive. Back us away slowly, ordered Hyunwoo. Don't make any sudden moves. But it was too late. The city was fully awake now, pulsing with power that their instruments could barely measure. As they watched in amazement and growing fear, parts of the city began to move. Sections that had looked like buildings unfolded into shapes that could only be ships. Captain, Taemin's voice was shaking. I'm reading massive energy buildups. Whatever these things are, they're powering up weapons. All stop. Raise shields. Sir, our shields won't do much against those power levels. The crystal ships moved. With purpose, spreading out from the city in a pattern that looked very much like a battle formation. They were graceful and deadly, each one easily twice the size of the Terra's Hope. Open all communication channels, ordered Hyunwoo. All frequencies, all languages we know. Channels open, sir. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Hyunwoo Kim of the human ship Terra's Hope. We come in peace as representatives of the Galactic Coalition. We mean you no harm and wish only to communicate. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a voice filled their minds. It did not come through their communication system or their ears. It spoke directly into their thoughts. You wake us from our long sleep, little creatures. You disturb our rest with your primitive ships and weak minds. We are the Vorthak. We have returned to reclaim what has always been ours. The voice was cold and ancient, filled with power and contempt. It spoke with the certainty of beings who had never been challenged. We are peaceful explorers, Hyunwoo said aloud, hoping they could hear him. We wish to learn about you and share knowledge. Harsh laughter echoed in their minds. Learn, share. You understand nothing, insects. This galaxy belongs to us. We shaped it when your species was crawling in mud. Now we return to find it infested with lesser beings who think themselves equal to their creators. So Young stepped forward. We have built a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. Many species work together in peace. Peace? The voice was amused now. There is no peace, only order. Our order. You will submit or be removed. There is no third choice. The crystal ships moved closer, their weapons charging with deadly light. But they did not fire, not yet. You interest us humans. Your minds are different. They resist our touch in ways others do not. This makes you potentially useful as servants, if you prove worthy. We will not be anyone's servants, said Hyunwoo firmly. Then you will be the first to die when we cleanse this galaxy of its infestation. But perhaps you would like to see what happens to those who resist us. Perhaps you would like to carry that message to your coalition. One of the crystal ships fired a beam of energy, but not at the Terra's Hope. The beam reached across space to the outer edge of the system, where a small research station had been hidden among the asteroids. The coalition had placed it there months ago to study the system. The beam touched the station, and it simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. It was there one moment and gone the next, as if it had never been built. That is what resistance brings, the voice said. Complete erasure. Now go, little humans. Tell your coalition that the Vorthak have awakened. Tell them that their time of playing at civilization is over. We give you 1 standard year to prepare for our judgment. The crystal ships pulled back, but their weapons remained trained on. The Terra's Hope. The message was clear. They could destroy the human ship at any time, but they chose not to. For now, Yuna, get us out of here. Maximum speed. The Terra's Hope turned and fled the system, carrying with it the worst news the galaxy had received in over 2 centuries. The peace was about to end, and something ancient and terrible had awakened to reclaim the stars. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Coalition Council took place on Alteria Prime, the beautiful blue world that served as the government center for hundreds of species. Representatives from every major civilization had gathered in the great crystal dome that housed the council chambers. Chancellor Zethva stood at the center podium, her tall blue form radiating the calm authority that had kept peace for 2 centuries. But today, even she looked worried. Captain Hyunwoo Kim and Dr. So-young Park sat at the human delegation table, still shaken from their encounter 3 days earlier. "The evidence is clear," Zethva announced to the assembled delegates. "An ancient species calling themselves the Vorthak has awakened in the Kepler 442 system. Their technology is far beyond anything we have encountered." Ambassador Minji Choi, Earth's representative to the coalition, stood up. She was known for her skill in difficult negotiations, but this situation was unlike any she had faced. Honored. "Chancellor, based on Captain Kim's report, these Vorthak seem to view all our species as inferior. They showed no interest in peaceful contact." From across the chamber, war leader Kexthul of the Keth Mori spoke up. The warrior race had always been the coalition's military strength, their honor-bound culture making them fierce defenders of justice. "If they want war, we will give them war. The Keth Mori have never bowed to any enemy." "This is not about honor or courage," said Chief Engineer Zilnara of the Zephyrians. Her small gray form was hunched over a data tablet showing power readings from the encounter. "Look at these numbers. One of their ships has more firepower than our entire home defense fleet." Murmurs of concern spread through the chamber. The coalition had faced threats before, but always from species with similar technology levels. This was different. Dr. So-young stood to address the council. "During our encounter, the Vorthak mentioned that human minds were somehow different, that they resist Vorthak mental influence. We don't understand why, but it might be important." "Explain," said Zethva. "When they spoke to us, it felt like they were trying to reach into our thoughts, to control us the way they might control others. But something about human brains seems to create interference." Engineer Tae-Hyun Nam, who had been studying the Terra's Hope's sensor data, had discovered something troubling. The human ship's electronic systems had remained stable during the Vorthak mental contact, while similar encounters with other species often resulted in complete system failures. "The Vorthak ships are not just machines," Tae-Hyun reported to the engineering committee. "They appear to be living organisms, grown, rather than built. This explains their incredible self-repair capabilities and adaptive responses." Within days of the council meeting, reports began flooding in from the Outer Rim territories. The Vorthak had not waited a year to begin their campaign. They had started immediately. The first target was a small Zephyrian research colony in the Vega system. The attack lasted exactly 7 minutes. When coalition ships arrived to investigate, they found the planet completely empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, empty. Every building stood perfectly intact, but every living being had simply vanished. Next came a Keth Mori military outpost guarding an important trade route. War leader Dexmore commanded 3 full battle cruisers and had never lost a fight. The Vorthak sent 2 of their crystal ships. The battle was recorded by automated defense systems. The Keth Mori ships fired everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the crystal hulls. The Vorthak ships responded by releasing clouds of something that looked like glowing mist. When the mist touched the Keth Mori vessels, the warriors inside simply stopped fighting. They turned their weapons on each other, then walked calmly to the airlocks and stepped into space. War leader Dexmore was the last to go. His final transmission, a single word: forgive. The recording showed the Keth Mori warriors floating peacefully in space, their faces showing no fear or pain. They had died willingly, happily, under Vorthak control. Captain Do Hyun Yoon commanded the coalition's rapid response fleet. He was a veteran of border conflicts and pirate suppression, known for his tactical skill and cool thinking under pressure. But when he led 12 ships to intercept a Vorthak force near the Centauri system, he learned the true horror of what they faced. The Vorthak had captured an Alterian passenger ship carrying 5,000 civilians. Instead of destroying it quickly, they were systematically converting the passengers into something else. The process took hours for each person, and their screams could be heard across all communication frequencies. "We can't just sit here and listen to this," said Commander Jisoo Lee, Do Hyun's second-in-command. "If we attack, they'll kill the hostages instantly," Do Hyun replied, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. "But if we don't..." The choice was made. for them. The Vorthak sent a message directly into their minds. Watch and learn what happens to those who resist us. They forced the coalition fleet to witness every moment of the conversion process. Alterians, known for their wisdom and calm, were transformed into something that looked like them but moved with jerky, unnatural motions. Their eyes became empty, their voices hollow. They were alive but not alive, puppets wearing familiar faces. When it was over, the Vorthak released the converted Alterians in escape pods toward the coalition fleet. As the pods approached, the transformed beings began speaking in perfect unison. "Surrender now. Join us willingly. Resistance brings only suffering." Du-hyun ordered his ships to retreat, but the image of those empty-eyed Alterians haunted his dreams for weeks afterward. The Alterian homeworld fell next, not through conquest, but through surrender. The Vorthak approached Alteria Prime with a fleet of 50 crystal ships. Chancellor Zethva stood in the council chambers as reports came in from the defense fleet. Admiral Velnara commanded 200 of the coalition's best warships, but her first engagement with the Vorthak lasted only minutes. "Their ships are healing faster than we can damage them," she reported. "And our crews. Chancellor, they're not responding to orders. They seem to be in some kind of trance." The Vorthak Prime consciousness, the being that had spoken to the humans, sent a final message to Alteria Prime. "You have seen what resistance brings. You have seen what defiance costs. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Continue to fight, and we will make your people into examples for others." Zethva faced an impossible choice. Fight and watch her entire species suffer the fate of the captured Alterians, or surrender and hope for mercy from beings who showed none. She chose surrender. The Alterian government formally dissolved itself, and their people submitted to Vorthak rule. Within hours, the crystal ships had landed in every major city. The Vorthak began the conversion process immediately, starting with the leadership and working down through the population. But they made one crucial change. Instead of the slow, agonizing conversion they had used on the hostages, they developed a faster process for the Alterians. It still removed free will and individual thought, but it left the subjects functioning and apparently content. Within a week, Alteria Prime was broadcasting messages to other coalition worlds. The transmissions showed Alterians going about their daily lives, working, eating, even laughing. But their eyes were empty, and they all spoke the same words when asked about their new rulers. "The Vorthak are our saviors. They have brought us peace. Resistance is foolishness. Join us in perfect harmony." The psychological effect on the remaining coalition members was devastating. If the wise Alterians had chosen submission, what hope did anyone else have? One by one, other species began to surrender. The peaceful Zephyrians, who had never fought a war, laid down their tools and waited for conversion. 3 Keth Mori clans chose ritual suicide rather than submit, but the 4th clan surrendered to spare their children. Only the humans refused to give up. Ambassador Minji stood before the emergency session of Earth's government and delivered her report. "The Vorthak have given us the same ultimatum they gave everyone else. Submit or be destroyed. But something about human minds makes us resistant to their control." President Han Soo Kim, elected just 2 years earlier on a platform of peaceful expansion, now faced the greatest crisis in human history. What are our military capabilities against this threat? Admiral Sang-ho Kim, Hyun-woo's older brother, provided the grim assessment. "Our weapons can't penetrate their ships' hulls effectively. Our shields can't stop their conversion technology. In a direct fight, we lose." "Then we don't fight directly," said General Eugene Park, a strategic specialist who had studied every recorded encounter with the Vorthak. "We've learned something important from these battles. The Vorthak expect submission or destruction. They don't expect adaptation." She brought up tactical displays showing human fleet positions throughout known space. "We have one advantage they don't know about yet. We're the only species that can think clearly when they're trying to control us. We can use that." The Vorthak, confident in their overwhelming superiority, had given humanity the same 1-year ultimatum they had given the coalition. But they had made a mistake. They had shown humans exactly what they intended to do, and humans were the one species that learned from watching others fight. Engineer Tai Hyun had been working around the clock with teams on every human world, studying the recordings of Vorthak encounters. Their ships are... 6 months had passed since the Vorthak ultimatum, and the galaxy looked very different. Where once there had been dozens of free species, now there were only scattered refugee fleets fleeing deeper into human space. Earth had become the last beacon of freedom, not by choice, but because it was the only place the Vorthak couldn't easily control. Dr. Yoon B. Jung worked in the underground command center beneath Geneva, analyzing the tactical situation that grew worse each day. She had been a military strategist before the Vorthak came, but her job had been planning defenses against pirates and border disputes. Now she was trying to figure out how to fight gods. "The pattern is clear," she told the assembled commanders. "The Vorthak don't just conquer worlds. They erase them from existence or convert their populations into slaves. There's no middle ground, no negotiation, no mercy." The holographic display showed the advance of Vorthak forces through coalition space. Red zones marked worlds that had been completely emptied. Yellow zones showed planets under conversion, their populations being systematically transformed into obedient servants. Green zones were the refugee corridors leading toward human space. Admiral Sang-Ho Kim studied the data with growing concern. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the outer human colonies in 3 months. "Which is exactly what they planned," said General Eugene Park. "They're not moving randomly. They're herding the refugees toward us, making sure we see exactly what they do to resistance." President Han Su sat at the head of the table, looking older than his 50 years. The weight of leading humanity's last stand had aged him quickly. "What about the conversion technology? Any progress on defenses?" Dr. So Young's research team had been working desperately to understand why human minds resisted Vorthak control. "We've identified the mechanism. Human brains generate a specific type of electromagnetic field that interferes with their mental manipulation. We can enhance it with neural implants, but what? The enhancement process is dangerous. About 30% of test subjects suffer permanent brain damage. And even with enhancement, we can only resist for a limited time." Commander Do Hyun entered the briefing room, his face grim. He had just returned from the Outer Rim, where his fleet had been trying to rescue coalition survivors. "I have news from the Proxima sector," he announced. "The Vorthak made contact again. They want to negotiate." Everyone in the room tensed. The Vorthak had never shown interest in negotiation before. "What do they want?" asked President Han Su. "They want to speak directly with our leadership. They claim they have a special offer for humanity." 3 days later, the meeting took place in orbit around Earth. The Vorthak sent a single crystal ship to meet with a human delegation aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony. The location was chosen carefully, close enough to Earth for emergency evacuation, far enough away that any Vorthak treachery wouldn't threaten the planet directly. Ambassador Min-ji led the human delegation, accompanied by Admiral Sang-Ho and Dr. So Young. They had volunteered despite knowing the risks. If the Vorthak could convert humans despite their resistance, these 3 would be the first to find out. The Vorthak representative materialized in the meeting room without using any visible technology. One moment, the space was empty. The next, a being stood there that hurt to look at directly. It was roughly humanoid, but seemed to exist partially in another dimension, its edges shifting and blurring. "I am Prime Consciousness Vexthul," it said, the words appearing directly in their minds. "I speak for the Vorthak in all matters. I am Ambassador Min-ji Choi, representing humanity and the remaining free peoples of this galaxy." "Free?" Vexthul's amusement was like ice in their thoughts. "There are no free peoples. There are only those who serve willingly and those who serve unwillingly. But you, humans, present an interesting problem." The beings circled them slowly, studying them like specimens. "Your minds are crude, primitive, chaotic, yet they resist our touch in ways that should be impossible. This makes you valuable." "Valuable how?" asked Admiral Sang-Ho. "As overseers. Your resistance to our mental influence means you can maintain individual thought while serving our purposes. You could rule the other species in our name, ensuring their obedience while maintaining the illusion of their old governments." Dr. So Young felt sick at the implications. "You want us to be your jailers. We want you to be practical." You have seen what happens to those who resist us completely. The Alterians chose submission and retained comfortable lives. The Kethmori chose death and achieved only extinction. You can choose service and retain authority. What exactly are you offering? Minji asked, though she already suspected the answer would be unacceptable. 10% of your species would retain individual thought and serve as administrators. The rest would undergo partial conversion, enough to ensure loyalty, but leaving them functional for labor and reproduction. All human worlds would be spared. Destruction. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, Admiral Sang-ho spoke. And if we refuse? Then you join the extinct species. But we will make your destruction educational for any other species that might develop resistance in the future. Vexthul gestured, and images filled their minds. They saw human colonies burning, populations being slowly dissolved in conversion, tanks, children being transformed into empty-eyed servants. The visions were so real, they could smell the smoke and hear the screams. Consider our offer carefully, Vexthul continued. You have impressed us with your adaptability. Do not disappoint us with foolish heroics. The being vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the human delegation alone with their horror. The report of the meeting sent shockwaves through human space. Emergency sessions convened on every human world as people struggled with an impossible choice: accept slavery for 90% of their species or face complete extinction. President Han Su called for a worldwide referendum. For the first time in human history, every adult human would vote on a single question. Should humanity accept the Vorthak offer of conditional survival? The debate raged for weeks. Some argued that saving 10% was better than saving none. Others insisted that slavery was worse than death. Religious leaders preached about martyrdom. Scientists calculated survival probabilities. Philosophers debated the nature of consciousness and freedom. But in the refugee camps where coalition survivors told their stories, a different conversation was taking place. Kethmori warriors who had chosen exile over conversion spoke of honor and the price of surrender. Zephyrian engineers who had escaped the initial attacks explained how the conversion process worked. Alterian refugees, the few who had fled before the surrender, described watching their families become hollow shells wearing familiar faces. Captain Hyun-woo, now commanding the defense of the Luna colonies, received a message that changed everything. It came from the converted Alterian homeworld, transmitted on an emergency frequency that few knew existed. The message was from his old friend, former Chancellor Zethva. But when her image appeared on the screen, her eyes were empty and her voice was flat. Greetings, Captain Kim. I am instructed to tell you that resistance is futile. The Vorthak offer mercy to those who submit willingly. I am happy in my service to our new masters. The message should have ended there, but it didn't. For just a moment, something flickered in Zethva's eyes. Her voice changed, becoming desperate and terrified. Hyun-woo, they're still in there, all of us. We can see everything, feel everything, but we can't control our bodies. We're trapped inside our own minds, screaming, and no one can hear us. Don't let them do this to your people. Death is better. Death is mercy. Please. Then the emptiness returned to her eyes, and she continued the official message as if nothing had happened. The recording was shared with every human leader within hours. The truth was clear. The Vorthak's mercy was a fate worse than death. The converted weren't content servants. They were prisoners in their own bodies, conscious but helpless. When the referendum results came in, they were decisive. 97% of humanity voted to reject the Vorthak offer. The remaining 3% were mostly children too young to understand the choice they were making. President Han Su announced the decision in a broadcast to all human worlds. We choose freedom or death. We will not sentence our children to slavery, no matter how comfortable the chains might be. The Vorthak response was swift and terrible. They accelerated their timeline, abandoning the remainder of their grace period. Vorthak fleets began moving toward human space immediately, and their advanced scouts started systematic attacks on outer colonies. The first battle took place at New Kyoto, a mining colony on the edge of human territory. Commander Do-hyun led the defense with 12 human ships against 3 Vorthak crystal vessels. The human ships were smaller and weaker, but they fought differently than previous coalition forces. Instead of trying to destroy the Vorthak ships directly, they focused on escape and evasion, gathering data and testing theories. Engineer Tae Hyun had developed new weapons based on his study of Vorthak biology. Instead of trying to blast through their crystal hulls, human ships fired specially designed viruses and toxins. The effects were small but noticeable. The Vorthak ships' self-repair functions slowed down. Their response times increased SE. 2 years had passed since the Vorthak ultimatum expired, and the war had changed everything. What had started as a desperate defense had become something else entirely. The humans were no longer just trying to survive. They were learning to hunt. Dr. Jae Sung Oh stood before a packed auditorium on Mars, addressing a mixed crowd of human soldiers and alien refugees. The historian had become an unlikely voice of the resistance, broadcasting messages throughout human space that reminded everyone why they fought. "Look around this room," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the speakers. "We are the children of survivors. Our ancestors lived through ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They survived plagues that killed half the population. They crossed oceans in wooden boats not because they had to, but because they wanted to see what was on the other side." In the audience, Lieutenant Eugene Park listened intently. She had volunteered for the most dangerous missions, leading boarding parties against Vorthak bioships. Her squad had developed tactics that the enemy still couldn't counter effectively. "The Vorthak think they know what humans are," Dr. O continued. "They see us as clever animals, useful servants who can resist their mental control. They don't understand that resistance isn't just something we can do. It's something we choose to do." Eugene's hand unconsciously moved to the neural enhancement device implanted behind her ear. The technology had improved dramatically since the early days. Now, instead of just resisting Vorthak control, the devices could actually cause feedback that hurt the alien telepaths. Colonel Mi-Young Lee sat in the front row, reviewing tactical reports on her datapad. She had pioneered the new fighting methods that were slowly turning the tide of war. Human forces no longer tried to match Vorthak ships in direct combat. Instead, they used hit-and-run attacks, boarding actions, and biological warfare. "We are not fighting this war to go back to the way things were," Dr. O declared. "We are fighting to move forward. Every Vorthak ship we destroy, every world we liberate, every mind we free from their control. We do it because that's what humans do. We fix things that are broken." The audience erupted in cheers, but the real war was happening in space, where human tactics had evolved far beyond anything the Coalition had ever attempted. Commander Dong-Jun Kim commanded the defense of Proxima Centauri, the human system closest to Vorthak territory. For 8 months, his forces had held the line against wave after wave of attacks. The system had become a graveyard of crystal ships, their broken hulls floating between the planets like monuments to human stubbornness. "Incoming Vorthak force," reported Lieutenant Hae-Won Nam from the sensor station. 12 crystal ships, approaching from Sector 7. "Same as always," Dong-Jun muttered. The Vorthak had tried the same direct assault tactics dozens of times, apparently unable to believe that creatures they considered inferior could continue to resist. "Deploy the minefields. Signal the boarding teams to prepare for launch. Human." Space mines were unlike anything used in previous galactic wars. Instead of simple explosives, they contained specially engineered viruses designed to attack Vorthak bioships. Dr. So-Young's research teams had developed dozens of different biological weapons, each one targeting a different aspect of Vorthak physiology. The crystal ships entered the minefield confidently, their hulls easily absorbing the small explosions. But the real weapons weren't the blast damage. They were the microscopic organisms that attached to the ship hulls and began eating away at the living crystal. "Vorthak ships are slowing down," reported Hae-Won. "Hull integrity dropping on all targets. Launch boarding pods." This was the part that had shocked the galaxy. While other species had always tried to destroy enemy ships from a distance, humans had developed the insane tactic of deliberately boarding Vorthak vessels while they were still fighting. Eugene's squad launched from the human cruiser Defiance in armored pods designed to punch through Vorthak hulls. The pods were suicide weapons. one-way vehicles that would either deliver their passengers safely or kill them in the attempt. "Remember the drill," Yujin told her team over the comm. "Neural enhancers at maximum power. Target the ship's brain. Centers first. No mercy, no prisoners." The pods slammed into the Vorthak ship's hull, their shaped charges blowing holes in the living crystal. Yujin's squad poured through the breach, their enhanced weapons firing continuously. Inside a Vorthak, bioship was like being inside a living nightmare. The walls pulsed with alien heartbeats. Tendrils reached out to grab intruders. The air itself seemed thick with malevolent intelligence. But the humans had learned to fight in this environment. Their neural enhancers not only protected them from Vorthak mental attacks, but allowed them to disrupt the ship's nervous system just by being there. "Brain center located," called Sergeant Minho Yoon. 30 meters ahead. They fought their way through corridors that tried to close around them, past defensive organisms that dissolved under human bioweapons. When they reached the ship's central nervous system, Yujin placed the special charges her team had carried. These weren't designed to destroy the brain center quickly. They were designed to cause maximum pain to the living ship, to make its death as agonizing as possible. The humans had learned that Vorthak bioships could feel fear and pain, and they had decided to use that knowledge. Charges set. Everyone. Out! The squad fought their way back to the extraction point as the ship began to convulse around them. The neural cascade weapon would take hours to kill the ship, and every moment would be agony for the creature that had once been used to destroy human colonies. Captain Haiwan Seo watched from the command deck of her ship as the boarding operation concluded. She had once been a peaceful explorer, mapping uninhabited systems for future colonization. Now she specialized in hunting down damaged Vorthak ships and ensuring they died slowly. "Boarding successful," she reported to Fleet Command. "Enemy bioship experiencing cascade failure. Estimated time to death, 6 hours." This was psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Word of human tactics spread among the Vorthak through their collective consciousness. For the first time in their million-year history, Vorthak ships began to retreat not from superior firepower, but from fear of capture. The change in Vorthak behavior became obvious during the Battle of Wolf 359. Prime Consciousness Vex Thul personally led a fleet of 50 crystal ships against the human stronghold, expecting easy victory against what they still considered a primitive species. Admiral Sang-ho commanded the human defense, using tactics that would have been considered war crimes against any species capable of surrender. But the Vorthak had made it clear that surrender was not an option for either side. "Deploy the Screamer missiles," he ordered. These weapons were Dr. So Young's most disturbing creation. Instead of destroying Vorthak ships, they infected them with a virus that caused constant, unbearable pain while keeping the ship functional. Infected vessels would flee the battlefield, spreading the virus to other ships and broadcasting their agony across the Vorthak collective consciousness. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Jeon Lee, "we're receiving transmission from the Vorthak command ship. Put it through." Vexthul's mental voice was different now. The absolute confidence was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like uncertainty. "Humans, your tactics are unexpected. You fight without honor, without mercy. This is not warfare as civilized beings conduct it." Admiral Sang-ho laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Civilized? You mean like dissolving prisoners alive while making their families watch? Like trapping conscious minds inside converted bodies? You want to lecture us about civilized warfare? We offered you terms. We offered survival. You offered slavery. We chose freedom." The battle that followed lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the Vorthak fleet. But more importantly, it marked the moment when the Vorthak began to realize that their ancient assumptions about galactic conquest might be wrong. Intelligence reports from captured Vorthak bioships revealed growing discord within their collective consciousness. The ancient species had expected swift victory, followed by easy rule over grateful subjects. Instead, they faced an enemy that refused to be beaten and had developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. Commander Sung-Min Choi led the intelligence analysis team trying to understand Vorthak psychology. "They're not used to fear," he reported to the War Council. For 1,000,000 years, they've been the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The concept that they might lose a war is literally incomprehensible to them. Good, said General Eugene Park. Fear makes enemies make mistakes, and the Vorthak are starting to make a lot of mistakes. The tide of war was turning, but not through superior technology or overwhelming force. It was turning because humans had discovered something about their enemies that no previous species had learned. The Vorthak could be hurt, not just physically, but psychologically. Every human victory was broadcast throughout the galaxy, reaching refugee populations and converted worlds alike. The message was simple but powerful. The Vorthak were not invincible gods. They were bullies, who had never faced real resistance, and like all bullies, they could be beaten. But the humans weren't content with simple victory. They had seen what the Vorthak did to prisoners. The war had entered its 4th year, and humanity was no longer fighting defensively. Admiral Eugene Park stood in the command center of the massive human battleship Vengeance, studying star charts that showed the locations of every known Vorthak installation in the galaxy. Operation Nemesis is ready to begin, he announced to the assembled fleet commanders. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of human ships throughout known space. What had started as a desperate defense had become the largest hunting expedition in galactic history. Our objective is simple, Admiral Park continued. We find every Vorthak ship, every Vorthak base, every Vorthak hiding place in this galaxy, and we destroy them all. Captain Insu Yang, commander of the stealth ship Silent Death, leaned forward in his chair. Sir, what about their offer to negotiate? They've been sending surrender requests for months now. The time for negotiation ended when they showed us what they do to prisoners, Park replied coldly. They wanted to teach us about extinction. They're about to get a practical demonstration. The human fleet had grown enormously since the early days of the war. Production facilities on every human world worked around the clock, building ships designed specifically for hunting Vorthak biovessels. These weren't the exploration ships that had first encountered the ancient enemy. They were purpose-built weapons of war, carrying the most advanced biological warfare systems ever developed. Dr. Kyung-Soo Lim's research had produced the breakthrough that made Operation Nemesis possible. The neural cascade virus was a weapon that turned the Vorthak's greatest strength, their collective consciousness, into their greatest weakness. The virus spreads through their mental network, Dr. Lim explained to the fleet medical officers. Once infected, a Vorthak consciousness experiences increasingly painful neural feedback. The more they try to communicate with other Vorthak, the worse the pain becomes. Lieutenant Commander Hai-Jin Park, who had volunteered to test the delivery systems, added the tactical details. The beauty of it is that they can't isolate infected individuals without breaking their collective consciousness. They either suffer together or become helpless individuals. The first phase of Operation Nemesis targeted the Vorthak's forward operating bases. These installations, built in the ruins of conquered coalition worlds, served as staging areas for attacks on human space. Captain Yang's stealth ship approached the base built on former Alterian colonies, moving silently through the debris field that had once been a thriving civilization. The Vorthak had converted the orbital facilities into growing chambers for their bioships, but they had made a crucial error. They hadn't changed the coalition access codes. We're using their own security systems against them, Yang reported as his team infiltrated the base. 15 years of peaceful cooperation with the Alterians taught us all their passwords. The infiltration team, led by Sergeant Da-Yoon Kim, carried specially designed biological weapons throughout the facility. Instead of trying to destroy the base quickly, they infected it with organisms that would consume it slowly from the inside. Virus deployed, reported Da-Yoon. The base's biosystems are already showing signs of infection. Within hours, the entire facility began to die. But more importantly, the dying base broadcast its agony across the Vorthak collective consciousness. Every Vorthak in the galaxy experienced the pain of the base's slow dissolution. Similar attacks were carried out simultaneously, across 12 different systems. The psychological effect on the Vorthak was devastating. For the first time in their existence, they were afraid to use their own communication network. Prime Consciousness Vex Thul, the being who had first contacted humanity with such arrogance, sent increasingly desperate messages to human command. "We are willing to discuss terms," the alien leader transmitted. "We acknowledge that humans have proven themselves worthy of negotiation." Admiral Park's response was broadcast across all frequencies. "You had your chance to negotiate. You chose to threaten our children instead. Now you get to learn what happens when you make humans angry." The second phase of Operation Nemesis involved hunting down the Vorthak's mobile fleets. Human ships, working in coordinated groups, began systematically tracking down every crystal ship in known space. Commander Ji-Won Lee led one such hunting pack, consisting of 6 human ships designed for rapid pursuit and boarding actions. Her target was a Vorthak battle group that had been responsible for converting 3 coalition worlds. "Target acquired," reported her tactical officer. 5 crystal ships, heading for the Vega system. "Probably trying to reach one of their safe zones," Ji-Won mused. "Too bad for them that there are no safe zones anymore." The human ships attacked using swarm tactics developed specifically for fighting Vorthak biovessels. Instead of trying to destroy the alien ships quickly, they focused on disabling their ability to flee while injecting them with biological weapons. "Deploy the pain inducers," Ji-Won ordered. These weapons were Dr. Lim's most vicious creation, organisms that attached to Vorthak bioships and stimulated their pain receptors continuously. Infected ships could still fight, but they were in constant agony. The Vorthak ships tried to retreat, but human pursuit vessels had been designed to be faster and more maneuverable than the ancient crystal ships. One by one, the alien vessels were infected and left to suffer while broadcasting their pain to the collective consciousness. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "the lead Vorthak ship is requesting surrender." "Denied," Ji-Won replied immediately. "No prisoners, no mercy. They made the rules of this war." The hunt continued for weeks, with human forces tracking down scattered Vorthak ships throughout the galaxy. Each victory was marked not by quick destruction, but by prolonged suffering, designed to terrorize the remaining enemy forces. Captain Su-Jin commanded the assault on the Vorthak's primary consciousness hub, a massive installation hidden in a nebula at the galaxy's edge. This facility served as the central nervous system for the entire Vorthak collective, coordinating their activities across known space. "This is their brain," she explained to her assault teams. "Cut it out and the rest of their forces become disconnected and helpless." The installation was defended by hundreds of bioships and protected by energy fields that could destroy entire fleets. But the humans had learned to fight dirty, using tactics that the honorable coalition species would never have considered. "Launch the Trojan ships," Su-Jin ordered. These vessels appeared to be disabled human ships, broadcasting distress signals and appearing helpless. When the Vorthak moved in to capture them for conversion, the ships revealed their true nature. They were massive bombs designed to detonate inside Vorthak formations. The explosions opened gaps in the facility's defenses, allowing Captain In-Su Yang's suicide mission to reach the central hub. His ship, loaded with the most virulent biological weapons in the human arsenal, punched through the installation's hull and detonated in the heart of the Vorthak Consciousness Center. The resulting explosion didn't just destroy the facility. It sent waves of psychic agony through the entire Vorthak collective network. For the first time in their million-year existence, the ancient species experienced true terror. Across the galaxy, isolated Vorthak forces found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness, alone and vulnerable. Many simply stopped, functioning, unable to operate without the mental network that had guided them for millennia. The third phase of Operation Nemesis was the most thorough. Human forces began systematically searching every system where Vorthak might be hiding, using advanced sensors and captured intelligence to locate even the smallest enemy presence. Captain Min Jung-seo led the team that discovered the Vorthak's ultimate refuge, a hidden installation inside a black hole's event horizon where they had planned to wait out any temporary setback and eventually return to reclaim the galaxy. "They're using the black hole's gravity to hide their energy signatures," she reported. "Clever, but not clever enough. The assault on the black hole facility required the ultimate sacrifice. Volunteer crews piloted specially designed ships equipped with exotic matter drives, allowing them to briefly survive inside the event horizon. Commander Taewoo Park led the final assault, knowing that his mission was one way. For everyone they killed, he transmitted as his ship crossed the event horizon. For everyone they converted, for everyone they made suffer. This is for them. The biological weapons deployed inside the black hole facility were the most devastating ever created. They didn't just kill the Vorthak. They ensured that their death would be slow, painful, and complete. When the facility was finally destroyed, the explosion created gravitational waves that could be detected throughout the galaxy. It was a signal that the Vorthak's last refuge had fallen. Prime Consciousness Vexthul, reduced to commanding a single damaged bioship, sent one final transmission to human forces. You have won, humans. We surrender unconditionally. We beg for mercy. Admiral Park's response was simple and final. You should have thought of that before you showed us what you do to prisoners. There is no mercy for extinct species. The last confirmed Vorthak ship was destroyed by Captain Boram Lee after a 3-year pursuit that took her across half the galaxy. She had sworn to personally hunt down every being responsible for her family's death, and the war was over. But its effects would last forever. Captain Boram Lee stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at empty space where the last Vorthak vessel had been destroyed just hours before. The coordinates would be marked in human databases, but no monument would be built. There was nothing left worth remembering. "Captain," her communications officer called, "we're receiving congratulations from Fleet Command. Admiral Park wants to know if you're ready to return to Earth." Boram nodded slowly. After 5 years of hunting, she felt empty. Her family's killers were dead, but the victory felt hollow. "Signal the fleet. Mission accomplished. All Vorthak forces eliminated." The message spread across human space and beyond, reaching the scattered refugee populations that had survived the war in human-protected systems. For the first time in years, the galaxy was truly at peace. On Alteria Prime, newly liberated from Vorthak control, former Chancellor Zethva stood before a crowd of her people. The conversion process had been reversed using human medical technology, but the memories of being trapped in her own body would never fade. "We owe our freedom to humanity," she announced to the gathering. They could have accepted the Vorthak offer and saved themselves. Instead, they chose to save us all. The crowd cheered, but there was something different in how they looked at the human representatives present. Ambassador Chul Sunam noticed it immediately. Respect mixed with fear. The other species had seen what humans could do when pushed too far. "The Galactic Coalition will be rebuilt," Zethva continued. "But it will be different now. We have learned that evil exists in the universe, and sometimes the only response to evil is complete destruction. The trials that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. The few Vorthak collaborators who had survived were brought before Coalition courts, but the humans insisted on special conditions. No Vorthak names will be spoken in these proceedings," declared Chief Justice Hanul Seo. "No Vorthak symbols will be displayed. No record of their identity will be preserved. They will be referred to only as the extinct species or the species that should not be named." Dr. Min-Sik Kim, now director of the Institute for Galactic Security, explained the reasoning to visiting diplomats. "Memory can be dangerous. If future generations remember the Vorthak as powerful beings who nearly conquered the galaxy, some might try to recreate their methods. Better that they be forgotten completely." The Vorthak databases were the first to be destroyed. Human teams worked systematically through every captured installation, erasing all traces of the ancient species' technology, culture, and history. Even their art and literature were destroyed, burned in fires that could be seen from orbit. "We're not just winning a war," explained General Eugene Park, now in charge of the cleanup operations. "We're erasing them from history itself. Future species will know only that something once threatened the galaxy, and that humanity made sure it could never threaten anyone again." The process took 2 years. Every Vorthak bioship was dissolved in specially designed acid baths. Every installation was sterilized and then destroyed. Every piece of technology was broken down to its component atoms. The humans were thorough in a way that impressed and frightened their allies. President Jin A-yoon, elected in the first post-war elections, addressed the rebuilding coalition from the floor of the new assembly on Earth. The decision to hold the meeting on humanity's homeworld was symbolic. Earth had become the de facto capital of the galaxy simply because it was the only place that had never fallen. We gather today not to celebrate victory, but to ensure that such a war never happens. Again, she announced. We have learned that the universe contains species capable of unspeakable evil. We have also learned that good beings, working together, can overcome any threat. In the audience, representatives from dozens of species listened carefully. The new coalition would be very different from the old one. Humanity's role had changed from diplomatic mediator to ultimate enforcer. Ambassador Seung-ho Park, the former admiral who had overseen the final phases of Operation Nemesis, now served as Earth's representative to the coalition. His office overlooked the memorial garden where the names of all war victims were inscribed, except for the Vorthak. Their victims were remembered, but their names were not. The rules are simple, he explained to new member species. The coalition exists to promote peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. Any species that threatens these principles will face immediate intervention. Any species that practices slavery, conversion of unwilling beings, or extinction-level warfare will be removed from existence. The enforcement mechanisms were already in place. Human patrol fleets moved constantly through coalition space, watching for signs of aggression or developing tyranny. The other species had learned that humans, when they committed to something, followed through completely. Captain Hyun-woo Kim, now Admiral of the Exploration Fleet, led missions to contact new species on the galactic rim. But these missions were different from the peaceful first contacts of the past. Every new species received the same message. Welcome to the galaxy. Here are the rules. Break them, and you cease to exist. The message was usually accompanied by recordings of empty star systems where aggressive species had once lived. The fate of slavers, conquerors, and would-be galaxy rulers was always the same: complete extinction with no trace left behind. Dr. So-Young Park, now in her 70s, continued her research into alien psychology, but her focus had shifted from understanding other species to identifying threats before they became dangerous. We look for certain patterns, she explained to her students. Species that view others as inferior, that practice systematic cruelty, that believe in their right to rule over others. When we find these traits, we act quickly. The preventive interventions were surgical and complete. Species that showed dangerous tendencies found their aggressive members removed, their weapons destroyed, their ability to wage war eliminated. It was often done so smoothly that the species themselves barely noticed until it was over. We call it evolution assistance, Dr. Park said with a slight smile. We help species evolve past their aggressive phases before they become threats to others. The psychological effects on the galaxy were profound. Young species grew up knowing that the universe was safe because humanity was watching. But they also knew that the safety came with absolute conditions. No species would ever again be allowed to threaten others the way the Vorthak had. A new Altarian diplomat, young enough to have no memories of the war, asked Ambassador Park about the hub of empty sectors of space where something had once lived. What happened there? Who used to live in those systems? Park's response had become standard throughout the galaxy. A species made humans angry. They don't exist anymore. We don't speak their name because names are for things that exist. But what did they do? They threatened our families. They enjoyed causing suffering. They left us no choice but to remove them completely. Park's voice carried a finality that ended the conversation immediately. Years passed, and new generations grew up in the peaceful galaxy that humanity had created. They learned the basic rules of galactic civilization. Be kind to others. Solve problems through discussion, never threaten the innocent, and never ever make humans angry. The empty sectors served as reminders. When young species asked about the gap in the galactic map, they were told simply, something used to live there. It made a mistake. President Yoon, now serving her second term, spoke at the 10th anniversary of the war's end. The ceremony was held at the Memorial of the Nameless, a simple black stone that bore no inscription except, "Here lies the memory of those who thought cruelty was strength. They learned otherwise. We have created a galaxy where peaceful species can thrive," she said. "A place where children can grow up without fear, where different beings can work together, where exploration and discovery replace conquest and subjugation." She paused. looking out at the crowd of representatives from hundreds of species. But remember this: our kindness is not weakness. Our peace is not passivity. We extend our hand in friendship to all who desire it, but we will never hesitate to close that hand into a fist if necessary. The applause was enthusiastic but respectful. Everyone present understood the message. Humanity had proven that they were the galaxy's best friends and its worst enemies, sometimes simultaneously. In the deep archives beneath Geneva, sealed records contained the only remaining information about the species that had once called themselves the Vorthak. The files would remain classified forever, accessible only to the directors of Galactic Security and their successors. Dr. Kim, now elderly but still sharp, maintained the archives personally. "Someone needs to remember," he explained, to his appointed successor. "Not their names, not their culture, not their achievements. Just the lesson they taught us about what happens when evil goes unopposed." The final entry in the classified files was simple. They awakened something in humanity that had slept for generations. They learned too late that humans, when truly threatened, become the thing that even nightmares fear. 50 years after the war's end, children throughout the galaxy grew up hearing bedtime stories about the brave humans who had saved everyone from the monsters. The stories always ended the same way. And the monsters were